everybody. Welcome to our very first CannaChat of the day. We wanted to start the day on a very current note. We're going to address COV or COVID-19, Corona, whatever we're calling it, current pandemic in relations to cannabis. We have some really amazing professionals lined up today to speak to the current state of it. We have our one and only man who will be joining us for the day, Dr.Robb, who is the owner and founder of Dr.Robb Farms. He has a PhD in cannabis, and he knows everything about medicine and cannabis. We have Madonna Hines, who is a cannabis reporter. She's going to speak to current events in cannabis. We have Angela Thomas, a licensed social worker and a behavioral health specialist, who will give you tips on suggestions in coping through this very difficult time and how we can leverage cannabis at the moment. So I'll allow all of them to introduce themselves, and then Dr. Robb, take it from there.
All right, sounds good. First of all, first and foremost, I am sincerely honored to be here. It means a lot to me, and I really do appreciate it. And I hope this is informational. So I'm a doctor. I don't look the part, but I'm a nerd. I do have a PhD. I'm by no means an epidemiologist, I will say that, but I am very scientifically literate and just a nerd in general. But I'm more than happy to talk about COVID-19 and cannabis in general. I'm the founder and CEO of Dr.Robb Farms, and we have cultivation primarily in California, and we're about to be launching in Massachusetts as well. But having said that, I do want to address what's going on with the current pandemic. And if you can kind of tell, it looks like all of us here are sheltering in place, which is a good thing. Cheers to that. But this gives us more time to consume cannabis, right? There you go. Unfortunately, there are some issues potentially with using cannabis and with this current pandemic. The coronavirus does infect the respiratory tract. And as we all know, one of the more popular ways of consuming cannabis is inhalation. This is both through smoking or through vaping. Unfortunately, using those types of methods does cause some irritation of the respiratory tract. Typically, in a world outside of the pandemic world, this is not an issue. This is not a big deal for most healthy individuals. However, we kind of want to make the assumption that chances are we might be getting this infection. And we kind of want to give our lungs the best chance they have to fight it off. And the reason why we're seeing so many people having issues with this particular coronavirus, for number one, is we have basically zero herd immunity. This is a novel, which means there's no herd immunity. People who compare this to the flu, this is not the flu. The flu is something that we have some level of immunity to. Now, there are other coronaviruses out there. However, this one is new to us, so we don't have very much protection against it. So we want to give our lungs and respiratory tract the best chance they have. Now, let's say outside of the pandemic world, 4 months ago, let's just say, everyone's doing fairly fine. If you're generally healthy and you've got a decent lung capacity and whatnot, smoking and vaping cannabis is not a significant issue. There is some level of irritation that does occur. And inhaling anything outside of just typical air can cause us a little bit of irritation and inflammation. Luckily with cannabis, we don't see those as a prolonged damage. However, at this point in time, we just want to give our lungs the best capacity to fight off this virus. And basically,
Dr. Robb.
Yes.
Sorry to cut you off. Just
no, of course.
Question for clarity: are we advising people to not consume smoking at all or find alternate methods, or are we advising them to scale back on their current? And we're speaking to people, generally healthy smokers with healthy lungs.
Yes.
What are we advising them to do right now?
Well, I would never say I would advise any medical or give any medical advice right now based off of what we're seeing to anyone else. But I can tell you what I'm doing. And so, I'm a regular vapor. I very much enjoy vaping. I very much enjoy smoking as well. However, I have switched to primarily edibles and topicals at this point. and also sublinguals. You know, one of the things that's kind of nice about inhalation and consuming this medicine via inhalation is you feel the effects really relatively quickly. It can be 30 seconds, 90 seconds, 2 minutes potentially, or for some people 10 minutes. Whereas, you know, with edibles, you don't feel the effects right away. And one of the big differences also with consuming edibles is those cannabinoids are now going to be processed through your liver. And so that THC, which normally when you inhale, you know, it goes very quickly through your lungs into your bloodstream, goes up to your brain where the THC and other cannabinoids bind to the CB1 receptor. So when you consume an edible, the THC does get converted into what is called 11-hydroxy THC. Now, 11-hydroxy THC is a little bit of a smaller molecule, but it still binds that CB1 receptor, still gives you the medicated feeling that THC does. However, one big difference is it's very, very permeable across that blood-brain barrier. And therefore, when you consume an edible, it may take longer for those effects to hit, but when they hit, they tend to be stronger and longer. And so if you're not used to using edibles, kind of have a sense of, you know, what is good for you personally. You know, 5 milligrams, 10 milligrams for someone who has a very low tolerance or someone who never really consumes cannabis is right around where you want to be starting. There's also microdosing, which is very good for anti-anxiety. As we all probably have a little bit of anxiety going on.
I support microdosing. I have anxiety, and microdosing has definitely helped me a lot.
Exactly right. So around 2.5 milligrams is something you can take. Now, once again, this is different for every person. Some people have higher tolerances because they consume cannabis on a regular basis, and so they might need some more. One thing I do want to also talk about is that CBD is a great anti-anxiety medicine. You know, CBD is an antagonist to THC, and too much THC can induce anxiety. And so CBD will actually counteract the effects of THC. And also one thing that's nice about CBD, it's a partial agonist, and that's just nerdy terms for it kind of partially binds to the serotonin receptor in our brains. One thing that's nice about that is, you know, serotonin, as many of us may know, is kind of gives you that general feeling of well-being when it's triggered. And so that's, you know, that CBD, when you consume it, even without THC. Now, granted, I do prefer to have all the cannabinoids together, but even without THC and the other cannabinoids, CBD does provide some level of anti-anxiety because it triggers the serotonin receptor as well.
That's a lot.
Well, I can keep on going.
So it's just unfortunate because we don't know what the next few months or life is going to look like after this. So do you see a change? Do you think there will be a general change in the way people are choosing to consume cannabis?
I think after the pandemic passes, I do believe that a lot of people are going to revert back to the methods of consumption that they are used to. And you know, right now with what we're dealing with, this is not completely new to us. We have had pandemics in the past, but this is new to this generation. Yeah. We've never seen this. I mean, no, 1918 was the last time we saw a true, real significant pandemic with the influenza virus that literally started in Kansas and at Fort Funston, and the World War I troops spread it all over America, or all over the world, basically. Well, back then, we didn't have the ability to understand. We didn't know germ theory all that well. We didn't understand it was viruses. We understand that these are viruses. There are many things we don't know, but we know a lot now. And like I always like to say, there's a bastardized Latin term for knowledge is power, and the scientia potentia est. Knowledge is power, and anxiety comes from not knowing what's going on. So that pursuit of knowledge, that going and finding out information and educating yourself is so powerful in this time of uncertainty. And I'm a firm believer that after the pandemic passes, it will pass. Yes, we're going to lose a lot of our loved ones. It's going to be very emotionally disturbing for a lot of us. But the vast majority of us are going to survive. And the vast majority of us are going to go back to business as usual for a lot of things. Of course, there are a lot of things I think we should be addressing, as you know, there are certain things in the system that seem to be broken that we should be addressing.
Absolutely.
But, yeah. And but for cannabis consumption, I think a lot of people are going to convert back.
Amen. Thank you, Dr. Robb. Up next, we have Kate. Kate's going to speak to current news in the cannabis space. Take it away.
Hi, I'm Kate Madonna, and I'm a reporter with the Fresh Toast. We syndicate over to the Chicago Tribune, London Times, just about everywhere. And I love what I do. I'm able to take medical terminology and make it better to understand, because not every doctor is like Dr.Robb, and most just use hard to understand concepts and words. And so it's my job and my goal to make things easy to understand. So as we're looking to where cannabis is and what its role is in COVID-19, we are in wholly uncharted territory, because as we know, we have a big lock on what we can do and can't do in medical research, which means that there isn't much research going on with a novel or new virus. So we know there's two issues going on. We have limited research, and we also have limited accessibility. MPP.org, you can go on their website, and they have one of the best up-to-date resources on what states are doing as far as medical marijuana and recreational marijuana and accessibility, which I think is a conversation that is just so important, especially right now with anxiety on the rise. So we know that news is always picking up, and states are always changing, but a lot of the states aren't offering delivery right now. And many of the states also aren't offering marijuana outside of medical as an essential service. So that's becoming an issue for many families around the nation. Additionally, if you look at NORML, NORML.org, they're a wonderful organization, and they focus on accessibility with marijuana as well, and they've got some really great up-to-date news. We know that marijuana and CBD both work really well for inflammation. So I know of two doctors right now who are having conversations in how can marijuana help with lung function, not being, of course, digested with a vape pen or smoked in any way, because we don't want to irritate the lungs with COVID. But we know that marijuana does have some healing properties with inflammation. So that's something that I know two doctors are looking at right now. And I suspect in about 6 to 9 months, we'll know a lot more. But I think the big questions we should be asking is marijuana continuing to be as accessible to families that need it? And number two is, are we investing in research or allowing research to happen? So we know we're only in phase 1 of this pandemic, unfortunately, and there's usually 4 phases or 4 waves, as we call them. And with those 4 waves, there's a lot of good that can happen between 2 and 4, because we don't yet know how long those waves are going to be. So I think writing to your legislation, and encouraging them to allow research to happen. And there is good research out there right now. The University of Iowa is doing research on an aging population with marijuana and CBD right now. And it's the first of its kind research. And the University of Iowa is looking at not only accessibility with marijuana, they are also looking at, does marijuana have the potential in populations that are having trouble with mobility to help with that mobility? So think of how that could help people coming out of COVID and who are struggling to get back to normal. So it's a very important study. You can fund the study and you can participate in the study by going to the University of Iowa's site.
Kate, for clarity, we have someone asking for you to confirm the npp.org website. Can you repeat that?
Yes, so it's M as in Mary, P as in Paul, P as in Paul.org. And if you go
MPP.org, okay.
MPP, you're welcome. And it's under the issues tab. If you go to issues and then medical marijuana, there's an entire spreadsheet on safe access, which I think is really vital and important right now to know.
Gotcha. You also mentioned the University of Iowa. Is that a particular website that we should?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll send you a direct link to the study after this, awesome. Or I'll try to do it when I'm on mute.
Perfect, perfect.
Yes.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Angela, with such hard, trying times, as Dr. Robb mentioned earlier, emotionally, this is going to take a toll on a lot of us, whether we're affected directly or inadvertently. We're all going to be affected in some way. And I know you wanted to speak to some health tips and suggestions on coping through this time.
Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are. Tianna introducing me. My name is Angela. I am a licensed social worker living in the state of Pennsylvania. I'm one of those essential staff workers working in the hospital as a medical social worker for the last 5 years. So I just want to talk about like anxiety and stress and how we cope with that, because every day is ever changing, and it's ever changing every hour. And we've never kind of experienced anything changing so rapidly, affecting so many people globally. So one, before I start, I just want to do really quickly, if we could do just a moment of silence for everybody that's affected by COVID-19, whether it be personally, professionally. Everybody's life has been transformed in some way. Either you're working at home, either you're not working, either all of your kids at home, either you're not going to the store or doing what you usually did, you know, in the past. If we could just take maybe 5 seconds for a moment of silence, just tune in all of our thoughts and then move forward from there. Okay. Just to start, as far as dealing with anxiety, what we want to do is try to start off our day with a purpose and intent. So we want to have an intentful day. So we might not be physically leaving the house, but the night before we go to bed, we want to map out a schedule of what our day will look like, to give us a purpose of why we're waking up, to give us something to look forward to. We have something to do. We have things we have to accomplish. We have tasks that we have to manage. So it's giving us something to look forward to versus always focusing on what's happening with the corona at this time. A lot of times, a lot of therapists, social workers, psychologists, we revert back to a psychologist named Abraham Maslow, and he talks about the hierarchy of needs. And what he says is, if your basic needs are not met, it's very difficult to function past that. So when I'm talking about basic needs, I'm talking about physiological needs. So COVID-19 has interrupted the basic needs as far as food, shelter, water, sleep, all of those things that we sometimes take for granted. This has kind of came and like interrupted all that. So one, if we can focus on having those things and not having to fear of not having those things, it will allow us to create a better mind space for us to be thankful or grateful for the things that we do have. So just want to focus on the fact that you do have shelter, the fact that you are able to eat, the fact that you are able to get a good night's sleep, even if it's frustrating that you're not able to go outside, or you're not able to get your hair done, or you're not able to go get your weekly massage or things like that. Next, we want to meditate, pray, or focus with silence, complete silence, at least for 5 to 10 minutes before we start our day. We kind of need to tune everything in. We need to focus. We need to practice our good breathing. And we kind of want to try to do that when maybe everybody is asleep. Maybe if you have to get up early, that you know, earlier, because now that the kids are home and the husband's home or the wife's home and everybody's working at home, it can be a little bit frustrating. But we want to try to take time out of our day to focus, and preferably in the morning, to kind of tune in and be able to get our day aligned. And that would also work with having a day with intent, because now that you're focused and you're quiet, you're actually planning and maybe possibly thinking about, okay, what is my day going to look like? Turn off the news, please. Turn off the news. Turn off the news. It can be a lot. Checking in the morning, because you kind of want to know what's going on. If you're in one of those shelter-in-place states, sometimes you may wake up and at 4 o'clock, everything is going to close by 5 o'clock. So you do kind of need to know what's going on, but it's not something that you want to be focused on all day, every day. It will drive your emotions. In social work and in therapy, in psychology, we have something called vicarious trauma. And what it is that you experience someone else's trauma to the point that you are displaying emotions as if you experienced that trauma. And we saw that a lot with the 9/11. We have experienced that with the mass shootings. So we do kind of want to manage our emotions, and in doing that, we do have to turn off the news. It's nothing wrong with being informed, but we don't necessarily have to follow it all day. Every single person that catches corona, every single news network, it will be draining at the end of the day. Like Dr.Robb and Kate talked about, there is a lot of research in Pennsylvania, I could say, in July of 2019, the state allowed for medical marijuana to be used for treating anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, that was a huge win for mental health and behavioral health. But like Kate was saying, because of this COVID-19, the data isn't there to necessarily support it. So there's conflicting resources. Some people say it is good, some people say it's not good. Some people say, okay, well, medical marijuana is only good for short-term fixes and not necessary for long-term because it can produce a addiction factor. But then I feel like people are addicted to psychotropic medications, and the opiate epidemic actually displays that. So you do have different personal opinions. I would say definitely follow your medical professional. Don't do anything on your own. Don't become your own doctor. You definitely want to consult, even if it's a telehealth appointment, because everybody's doing telehealth appointments right now. So you definitely want to consult with a medical professional before you do anything as far as any kind of treatment. Take time to focus on what you do have. Like I said earlier, it's easy to focus on what you don't, but take time to focus on what you do. If you have a loving family, focus on that. If you have a roof over your head, focus on that. If you have friends that you might not be able to see, but y'all can do like a Zoom gathering is what we're doing right here. Focus on that. You know, so many people are finding creative ways and creative ideas to interact that we never even thought before, but now that we have the ability to use our mind, we can, and we have so many different tools as far as to assist us with technology. It makes it a lot easier. Have that dedicated alone space. It is definitely needed. Everybody needs to be able to unwind alone, even if it's in a car, even if it's in a bathroom, even if you have to schedule it. Like, schedule yourself alone time. Like, you need this time. Everything is changing ever so rapidly. You can only be so many things to so many people at so much. You need to be able to take time out for yourself to digress and just relax. If possible, learn a new hobby. We have a lot of time right now. There's so many classes and so many things that you can take advantage of online, where you can increase your skill on so many different topics, even just being more knowledgeable about different things, not necessarily having to master a skill, but just understanding things differently. You have the time to do so. Be connected with family. Try not to stay alone. At the end, if you do need therapy, therapists, mental health professionals, behavioral health professionals, we're all out there. It's actually a really good time to do therapy right now because everybody's doing this telehealth, and you don't have to feel like, you know, scared or nervous about sitting in front of somebody. A lot of people don't even want to talk to therapists because they don't want people sitting in front of them. Mute your screen and just start talking, and you will find that that would help you out a lot. That's kind of all I have. If you need me, I don't really necessarily plug big brands, but if you guys need me, you can always hit me up in athomaslsw@gmail.com. And that's that.
Thank you. To piggyback off of the therapy thing, I know, guys, a lot of guys and gals, or gals and guys, I know a lot of states are offering free resources and free therapists. I know, for example, the state of New York, I believe 6,500 therapists volunteer their services for free. I will find that link. We'll find that link and send it out to everyone. We'll also provide the contact information and following for Dr. Robb, Kate, and Angela. Thank you all for your time. We'll be here all day. Thank you for starting the day off on this very necessary note. We appreciate you, and stay tuned for our next chat, which is Cannabis in the Media.
Yay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.